Many top players in the Fortnite competitive scene have banded together to form the Fortnite Professional Players Association in an effort to better the competitive scene in working directly with the developers. Here to break down the FNPPA is Jacob Wolf. I'm Arda Ocal here with ESPN ESPORTS. This announcement dropped on Twitter 3 days ago. There was a statement, some top competitive players attached to it. What did you make of the announcement?
I mean, I was very, underwhelmed, right? I think that I like the idea of collective bargaining, particularly when some of the players on this list and others have been very vocal against the way that Epic Games sort of handles patches and the way they handle their competitive scene, and how a lot of players are unhappy with that, but again, have to kind of comply because of the money at stake. I like that idea, but this, for a game that is, and this got a lot of attention to be clear, for a game that is the most popular game overall right now in the world in terms of media coverage and everything else, you got to do this right. And this looked like a notepad document, something that I typed out on a Windows 2000 machine. It was very basic. There's not a website. There's not really even a logo. And didn't even seem like I saw a couple of the players in the thread replying to people, but more or less, didn't seem like a lot of people were promoting it either. And then in the case of, I saw Jeannie Kim, who I know is a lawyer that does immigration stuff, immigration work in esports, and she was responded something about getting letters of recommendations from the association to help players get into the United States, right? Mm-hmm. That's a part of that process. And somebody responded that's involved and was just like, this is not an actual legal entity. So what the hell is this? More or less, is it just players putting their name on something and then not promote? What is this actually? It does not seem like it's anything more than just a tweet with, crappy imaging.
We should mention that there are, I believe it's 16 names that are attached to this, including heavy-duty names. Benji Fishy, Booga's on this list.
Yeah, world champions.
Zexro, Aqua also.
Bizzle.
Bizzle is on this list as well. And like you said, not everybody has publicly commented about this. They are simply listed in this particular tweet from the FNPPA. Well, in your opinion, then, what should an organization like this do? I mean, it sounds like one thing that they're very keen on is to work with the developer to hone and to fine-tune the competitive scene. But is that even possible from this point of view? What sort of leverage would this organization have other than to say, well, we're not going to play if you don't comply?
Yeah, and I mean, what in an individualistic game like that, how much does that hold, right? There's nothing that you can compare Fortnite to one-to-one. I mean, I guess golf and combat sports are sort of the ones you can point to in terms of individualized, but they're not negotiating against a league exactly. They're negotiating against a developer who also runs competitions.
Yes.
When you look at the Counter-Strike Players Association, the CSPPA, that is something I think is a little bit higher up, right? This is an organization that actually employs people that they're not exactly public facing, but you can go find out who they are. They're working with people like Sir Scoots as an advisor, and the players are involved. That one is not player funded. That's the step that no players association in esports has made yet, right? So that really there's three, I guess, at this point: the Fortnite Players Association, Counter-Strike Players Association, and the LCS Players Association. Mm-hmm. So the Fortnite Players Association, we have no clue on sort of the structure here, right? Counter-Strike Players Association is not player funded. The LCS Players Association is even worse. It's funded by Riot Games.
Right.
So there's massive conflict of interest there, right? I think that it's about time, particularly in a game like Fortnite, where streaming contracts, we've seen the dispute with Tfue and FaZe, right? Streaming contracts, and all of this money is on the line, right? Take the prize money away, but what people are making every single day as Twitch streamers and everything else, there's so much money on the line. Players should take some more responsibility besides just putting out a little quick image. They should take a little bit more responsibility and really do some diligence here. They should fund this thing. They should honestly fund this thing, and they should hire people on their behalf, for this, and I don't think that's happening. Otherwise, it would not look like this.
Well, hopefully there's more that will come out. I do think that, to play devil's advocate, this is a step in the right direction. Something like this is necessary. An entity certainly is necessary that has the players' interests at mind the most. And who better to represent the players than the players themselves? And having strength in numbers is absolutely necessary.
You can make that argument, but also, like, do you, some of these guys are 16, 17, 18 years old. Do you really expect them to represent you the best? There's a reason the Counter-Strike Players Association, even though these players are in their, like, mostly in their late 20s, the leaders in that organization, Sir Scoots and the other guys that are European that are working the entity itself, that's what they do. They are older businessmen that have more experience. They know how to negotiate, right? They can deal with owners and leagues.
We need Sir Scoots types in this organization to help them as well.
Of course, but, like, I don't know what this achieves yet, and I'm not being a union buster, right? This is not even a union, but I'm not saying, like, disband collective bargaining. I am for collective bargaining generally. I think it's better, and I think there could be a lot of benefit for a Fortnite Players Association to exist that does that in a professional manner. This is not that yet. Maybe we'll get to that point, but the first step, we need players to acknowledge that they're a part of this. That's not happened.
Okay.
We need players to hire someone besides themselves, because I don't anticipate any of these 16 players.
Or the person that is in place that be made public.
Right. And some of these players have agents. Like, hello, you're on the right path. If you're hiring someone to be your agent, you should hire someone to be the head of your Players Association. You should announce that person, and that person should have a relationship with the teams and a relationship with Epic and the other developers. This is essentially a notepad document, man. Like, this is a step in the right direction, but I wouldn't have launched with this if I was in charge.
Fast forward a little bit. Let's end on this. What do you believe a perfect balance would be? Because immediately, people who also follow this sort of thing in the sports world will look at the relationship between a players' association in sports and a league, and see how that works with collective bargaining agreements and them being an actual union in terms of players and sports. What do you think a fair and ideal scenario would be for this players association in this esports ecosystem?
It's really interesting, right? When we're talking about it in the traditional sports sense, when we're looking at the National Football Players Association and the National Basketball Players Association, particularly, which are very prominent, particularly the NBPA, the NBA doesn't own the game of basketball. There are leagues all around the world. And if the brinksmanship got to a point where, like, both parties were like, screw this, we don't want to work together, like, those players could go play somewhere else in the world. Would they make the same sort of money they make in the NBA? Certainly not. However, that's possible. Epic Games owns the IP. They could just, if these players are like, we don't want to play in Epic tournaments or whatever, if that ever reached that point, Epic could just say, we're not going to license anything else. Go play another game. Go play Apex. Go play PUBG. Go play something else, right? But the prize money is so there. The balance of power between player and Epic is players are down here and Epic's up here. That they are.
So in what world can it be raised? In what world? In this scenario where Epic owns the IP and owns the game in which the competition is being played, how do the players amass at least a credible amount of power such that they can have a seat at the table and have a conversation where Epic will listen?
So banding together is one of those first steps, right? Having all of that reach. A lot of these players are big names, but they aren't the biggest name. Like, Ninja is not necessarily a professional player. He's not involved in this. This is a game that has streamers that sort of peddle its popularity and keep it consistent, right? So they really don't even need the professional players. I think it's important to have the professional players, but none of these players have the influence that the biggest influencers in the game do. Even though some of them are like Bizzle and like Booga, obviously after his World Championship win, have grown in popularity, they are still not to the level where Epic needs them, cannot operate without them. What is the NBA without LeBron James and James Harden and Steph Curry and Giannis Antetokounmpo, right? It is nothing without its players, right? The National Basketball Players Association exists for that reason, because they can negotiate against that. Epic doesn't need their players that much at this point. Other games, arguably, in esports, do need it more. They need their pro players more because they drive their community. Things like Counter-Strike is a good example of where that balance of power is a little bit more fair. Still unfair for the players, but still a little bit more fair. So banding together is a good start, but all of these guys, like, there's incentive to try to make their brands as big as possible. They should be like hosting each other's streams and like cross-promoting the hell out of each other when they're busy, right? Because at that point, if you get big enough where Epic can't ignore you, then you become a power to reckon with. But that doesn't exist right now. And so while this is a good step in the right direction, I think generally that more should be done here.
Answer this question in the comments. Will the Fortnite Professional Players Association survive? Yes or no, and why? Let us know in the comments of this video. And while you're at it, please subscribe to this channel and ring that bell so you'll get notifications whenever videos like these drop. And of course, continued coverage available at ESPN.com/esports.